Greetings, this is Timothy Halloran. I'm dropping this on November 17th, 2022. Although I am being perceived, probably through a computer monitor, as a friendly reminder, I am a human being, and it is through living and being with you in this experience that I am able to provide these reflections and feedback. What we talk about in these videos is one part, what's going on at this time. And the astrology is to give us an understanding not just what, but why we're having the experiences that we do. The other part that is even behind this service of offering the astrology of the times is we are evolving our relationship to nature and our understanding of the truth. Astrology is nature with a capital N. It's truth with a capital T. So as we're studying astrology, we're also evolving our understanding and relationship to nature itself. That being said, I want to begin this video by putting a shout out to those of you who may be going through it. My heart goes out to you. May you receive the support, the illumination, and the validation that you need to pick yourself up and to keep moving, even through challenging times. Again, the service that I provide, evolutionary astrology, is not merely to understand what, but why we are having the experience that we're having. And as we're going to talk about under the Sagittarius New Moon, we are all on an exploration of what is the truth. Why are things the way that they are? And I want to reassure you that this is not a punishment, reward, Santa Claus reality that we live in. This is not a you deserve what you experience world or reality that we live in. This is a word I would like to subtract from our perspective of things. Nobody deserves anything. But we are having experiences for the purpose of our own learning and growth. Do I see the people who are hitting the nail on the head have perfect, easy lifetimes and experiences? Absolutely not. So many of the crises, even the traumas that we experience throughout life, is driven by evolutionary necessity. It's not what I would choose. It's not what I would want anyone to experience, and yet it is. And there is a purpose and a meaning that goes far beyond doing the right or wrong thing. So I wanted to kick off this video. My heart goes out to you, those going through it, and please relieve yourself of the burden of self-blame or taking accountability for a life that is really meant to be challenging for certain people at certain junctions, and this is not an evaluation of pass, fail, success, not success. You may have noticed that rich children receive more gifts from Santa Claus than necessarily good children. Let's bear that in mind, and at the same time, I don't mean to take away from anybody that's having an experience of happiness or joy. May that motivate your capability to inspire, uplift others, or to create something really beneficial in the world. Thank you for holding that space, for providing that service, for those of us who could use a little bit of some upliftment at this particular time. I'll be honest, Shadow Sagittarius is one of my least favorite things. The shadow of Sagittarius is where we can fall into assumptiveness or moralizing or crusadum and making things, how shall we say, bypassing or bite-sized or oversimplifying when that's not how life is, especially not right now where I'm delivering this video still in the midst of an eclipse season. So this month began with a south nodal solar eclipse in Scorpio conjunct Venus in Scorpio. Muddy, complex. We're dealing with heart issues, we're dealing with power issues, we're dealing with human needs, and we're dealing with the complexity of where do we get what we need from who can we trust, and there is a collective theme of betrayal. There's a collective theme of who can you trust, who's got your back, who's totally clean, who's totally perfect, And I'll be the first to let you know it's nobody. If we're not looking at our own shadow, if we don't know where we all have a little bit of coal that we're receiving this year for Christmas, then we're just simply not aware. So I, in no way, shape, or form want to put down coaches or coaching, but we want to move beyond the era of coaches and coaching simply being these pep talks of you can do it, chin up, button up, smile on your face, plow through it, not necessarily what we need. That's a very hyper masculine approach to healing. And what we're trying to reintroduce collectively is a much more feminine approach that would be caring, considerate, and checking in. So we're not overly assuming that what something appears on the surface. We're not assuming that that's the whole of what it is. The feminine is sensitive, yearning, yielding, melting, so to understand the depth of this complexity. This is easier said than done at this time. As I'm going to mention, some of the collective astrology is quite complex. How do we take care of ourselves? How are we going to be of service to others? And it's blurry. How much to give, how much to take, how can we show up in a loving way without self-sacrificing? How can we relate to the other clearly, with stability, with provision, and with accurate seeing of who we really are? That is the question of this new moon. What is the truth? What is the very purpose of life? And right now, we can be experiencing a bit more tail spinning, a bit more directionlessness, as we'll talk about. But we want to use that spinning out as an opportunity to explore, in which case this new moon can really be a new beginning. This last cycle, again, my heart goes out to so many souls that are going through really intense struggles. No, it is not a punishment. It is not a right-wrong universe. This is being driven by evolutionary necessity. Scorpio is what is beyond our limitation and yet pushing us to go beyond our limitations. We're seeing what our limitations are. We're seeing what pushes us over them. We're seeing how we react and respond when we go into that level of despair or not having our needs met, or this type of deception or backstabbing or betrayal. I mean, this is really dense, thick times. Can also be extremely rich and fertile, like a rich dessert. But it is a dessert that has a full spectrum recipe. Scorpio's the good, the bad, and the ugly. All of that experience is what awakens our heart. The full spectrum experience of life on earth, the heaven and the hell, the pleasantries and the horrors, awakens our heart to really be in service of living and life and humanity, to honor and fan the flame of humanity, even when humanity goes through a crossroads or a passageway that can be quite challenging. Why? Because things need to change. Things need to change in a very intense and sometimes a bit beyond our comfort zone type of way. Now, new moon will be on the 23rd in the sign of Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter, who is stationing direct on the very same day, 28 degrees Pisces. The new moon even trines that Jupiter as it stations direct. So this is very symbolic, meaningful astrology. Jupiter went into Pisces at the beginning of 2022. Then Jupiter conjoined Neptune, springtime, exact in March of this last year. The new moon in November of 2022 is going to reflect upon the beginning of the year. The travels, the explorations, the philosophical adventures, the meandering, the uncertainty, the purposelessness. We're looking at some of this right now. Where do we feel concrete, and where is there this giant question mark? Or what may seem like a fog machine, and it's like, what's 2 inches in front of our faces? We don't know. Who are they? We don't know. What's the truth? I mean, this is a real philosophical, pondering question. And what we're reviewing is the beginning of this year, where there probably was some experience or exploration that had this deeper theme of discovering the meaning of life, the bigger picture perspective. What is truly good? What is truly inspiring? What is administering the benefit or social benefit is positive Jupiter Sagittarius back to the world. And this brings up philosophies, belief systems, religion, cults, temples. Where do you find access to the truth? Where do you find inspiration that keeps us moving? Again, nothing wrong with coaches and coaching, but how do we effectively uplift one another? And it's not just a one-liner. It's not just a pep talk. It's like, no, we have to really, really understand the deeper meaning, mystery, you could say, of love, of living, of humanity itself. Now, Jupiter stationing direct on this new moon means that, first of all, this whole forthcoming month going into December will have this theme of remembering and reflecting upon earlier 2022. What was that? This adventure, this philosophy, or was it escapism, or was it delusional? That's what we're looking at. And Jupiter stationing direct is making it clear. It's like, oh, okay, there really was a wheel missing. We've been driving with 3 wheels the whole time, as it turns out. Okay, we thought that we had a compass leading us north, and it turns out that our compass was, painted the wrong way. It can be a reaffirmation. What we knew the entire time was true. How much have we deceived ourselves versus how much are we accepting what is? And it's probably a little bit muddy. It's like, how do we bring what is really good into the world? What does that look like? And what I would like to personally share with you today as my own personal fuel for inspiration and feedback is that we want to be going beyond the Santa Claus paradigm. Okay. We're coming out of a Pisces age. So this Jupiter going back and stationing direct in Pisces is a remembering of this deeper ontological, spiritual, philosophical truth and meaning that is evolving. Now, as I mentioned, where these times are tricky is how much do we show up to one another? Like right now, this week, mid-November, is like really easy for us to alienate ourselves. It's like, Jesus Christ, people, oh my God. Scary, yeah. Frightening, yeah. Disappointing, yeah. I mean, that's again why my heart goes out to you. I'm not doing any sugar-coated astrology. Okay, so yes, there's like a scraping of the bottom of the barrel of the shadow, the unconscious, ulterior motivations, what's actually driving this whole play. What's actually driving the whole thing that we're doing? That's this deeper truth. Are we really into spirituality, or are we calling something spiritual to get away with something? There's absolutely tons of this for all of us in spiritual-minded communities or in practicing a spiritual, mindful life. That's what we're looking at right here and now. And so the Santa Claus paradigm, that's like, I'll do the Gemini thing and take the extreme. Santa Claus paradigm is where rich and entitled people get away with everything that they have because they must have done something really good and they're burning their good karma. Oh, I was spiritual in a past life, so now I'm being raised in my parents' mansion and I have everything given to me. I'm a good boy, so Santa Claus brought me presents. And it's like, okay, I think it's a little bit more than that. I personally don't look at starving children in Africa and say that they're not positively manifesting the way I've heard big, rich, successful, spiritual teachers mention. So that's one extreme. The other extreme is the total self-sacrificial old age Christian model, right? Feel guilty about being human, sacrifice all your needs and desires in order to be like Jesus Christ hanging on the cross for all people. Okay? I think there's some middle ground here. I think that's where we're evolving our belief system, is it not? It's like, how much do you actually sacrifice for goodness? That's a real question right now. How much do you put out there for free? How much do you recognize and value your own worth? Are you charging enough to be respected? Because I'll tell you, the absolute most miserable, abusive experiences I've ever had with people on the internet or in my community are people that take things for free. Okay. You have to recognize your own value. You have to recognize your own worth in order to preserve and protect yourself. These are Taurus lessons that we're all getting hard and fast right now. Again, we could do the extreme thing and go off and be a hermit. I have everything that I need. I don't need anybody, but that's probably unrealistic. And then the amount of grabbiness and neediness, and I need them to be this for us, and I need them to do that for us, is probably, again, there's some middle ground here. I think we're starting to understand what it must be like to be human. It's quite complex. This is why I do not like Shadow Sagittarius, which can bypass, cop out by saying the spiritual one-liner, believing the right thing at the right time, and then, getting away scot-free. And, Shadow Sagittarius doesn't even recognize itself as a shadow. When Christian missionaries were torturing people to death for having the wrong belief system, they believed they were doing the right thing. So let's seriously look at what we consider right and what we consider wrong, and let's move beyond this moralistic crusadum, assuming, projecting what something is on the surface must be, what it is deeply. It's easy to call out in the New Age movement. I've seen all these memes, happiness is high vibe. So if you're grouchy, you're low vibe. So you're being assessed on your happiness level as your spiritual advancement. And I'm just going to call this right here, clear and simple. As you spiritually progress, your life doesn't necessarily become any easier. So this whole happiness as the assessment of your evolution could not be more misleading. Again, Santa Claus reality. As you spiritually evolve, there are more and more challenges that come that are assisting your soul's evolution. So no, things do not get easier, and the people selling that snake oil are usually the people abusing and getting away scot-free by using a belief system to enable their own despicable behavior. Okay. So we need judgment. That's something I oftentimes say to this audience, is that we don't want to be pointing the finger at one another and being just like, you're being judgmental. You're being critical. Again, why are you grouchy instead of happy? The amount of abuse that I've personally witnessed in spiritual circles, I encourage each and every one of you to be an effective judge. Practice judgment. Become more effective in your judgment. Judgment is discernment. It is the ability to see something for what it is. That's what a judge is. Okay, so we need to judge to live a healthy life, to not self-sacrifice, to not be self-absorbed, good boy, good girl, getting presents from Santa. Okay. Assumption is the issue. Everybody's pointing the finger, oh, you're being so judgmental and critical. That's not the problem. The problem is that people are assuming without knowing. They look at something on the surface and they say, oh, look, that person's happiness level is only at 70%, so they need to work on their attitude. How many of you have run across this in the pop spiritual circles? It's always an attitude problem. Like, hey, you're angry. Can you change your anger? Because your anger is an attitude problem. I think that could probably exist for so many different reasons that it would be wildly assumptive to assume that this thing that I'm seeing on the surface is an attitude problem, or this person needs to, change their frown into a smile as if they weren't traumatized, having fundamentally missing needs, starving, poor, uneducated, experiencing extreme injustice. etc. So we're coming out of Santa Claus, Jesus hanging on the cross, self-sacrificing reality into a truth, into a nature that's multifaceted, that's quite complex. We're now embracing the human being as a multifaceted composite. Animal, human, spiritual. We're not demonizing our animal nature as being only an interference to our spiritual progression. We are not bypassing our bodies or our senses as being something other than an essential need, when our body is what is informing us of essential needs. This is all reintroduction of feminine coming out of a patriarchal, distorted, hypermasculine, collective belief system, which has traditionally been, if you do the right thing and you pray to the right God, you'll be rewarded. That's not the reality that we live in anymore. What we are introducing as evolutionary astrologers is that what we experience is being driven by an evolutionary purpose. There are lessons to be learned, but it's not as personal as a reward or punishment-based system. What we want to be increasing is the safety to actually embrace our life experience. And this is the real service of astrology. What we want to be creating are the actual containers and circles that are safe enough to be truly revealing and vulnerable. And this is what we're creating at Rasalila Community. This is how we get out of the assumptive, projective, moralistic, people get what they deserve, let's leave the world behind and escape into this church or this cult. The right people will make it. Everybody else is on the wrong side, etc., etc. Now I mentioned body. We've got Mars retrograde, sexuality, drive, desire, libido, motivation. This is where there's a tail spinning. It's this weekend, the 19th Mars retrograde squares Neptune. So the first time Mars squares Neptune was on October 12th. And then Mars will square Neptune again next year in March. So there's this whole Mars retrograde, which is going to take us into an exploration of desire, energy, brings up a lot to do with physical, bodily well-being, everything to do with health, but also sexuality. This is our fundamental, we could say, base level animal furnace. And we're burning that fuel to get up in the morning, to live our day, to be excited. We need to have some spark, some excitement for living, even if that is desire, which hurts because it is the distance between where we are and where we'd like to be. Old religious Christian model says desire is fundamentally in the way of you and your spiritual progression. That's kind of true, because we're eliminating all desires except for the desire for God, or to return to the source of all things, or to return to the earth, or to return to nature, whatever you prefer. That is the one desire that does not hurt. That is the one desire that brings us back home. The other desires, they do get in the way, but not in a way where we should feel bad about it or try to burn it off or get rid of it. It's like we have our desires for a reason. What frustrates us? What angers us? What sets us off? What triggers an instinctual reaction? We would never want to say, oh, look, you just got triggered. There must be something wrong with you. Again, the shit that I see all the time out there on Facebook, New Age world. Oh, you're triggered, so obviously this has to do with you. And it's like, there is a trigger for a reason. We would never want to assume that because someone is triggered, they're automatically doing something wrong. This is absolute insanity. We're always going to be experiencing triggers. Good. That's healthy. We want to understand why. We want to form a relationship to our body, libido, sexuality, and desire nature that is inspiring. I've even mentioned how fantasy itself could be something that we run into a delusion or not being in the world and tail spinning out there. Or, like reading a book or going to a movie, we could go into a fantasy realm that is inspiring and uplifting. So this is the dilemma, the exploration, the uncertainty of Mars square to Neptune. Again, exact this weekend. This is where we have the experience of, what do I do? What do I want to do? I mean, this is directionlessness, and that's okay. This is not about hitting the nail on the head, domino effect, everything falls down perfectly in order, period. No. Juggle, sample, taste test, Marie Kondo. If it has a spark, hold it. If it does not have a spark, drop it. But we can be juggling, holding a lot of things, still evaluating some things, and that's all right. Neptune is our higher reason for being. This new moon is ruled by Jupiter in Neptune's sign of Pisces. This is, again, what is the purpose behind all of life itself? Mars square to Neptune is, how do we get this individuality, my ego, my body, my desire, my sexuality aligned with the greater whole, the needs of the collective, the purpose of the time. This square says there's a tension that's there. There's a disagreement. There's an uncertainty. It's going back and forth. Do I totally self-sacrifice like Jesus, or do I, celebrate my life with the secret and Santa, and I create my own reality and nothing else exists? So again, we're doing this deeper exploration and evaluation to come into a holistic integration of all the above. Individual, desire, excitement, greater meaning, greater healing, and interconnectivity between individual and collective. This is a very creative aspect, as much as it can be challenging, uncertain, many layers to work through. Again, new moon on the 23rd. What's the truth? What's the point? What's the purpose? What's the bigger picture? What's right and what's good? Again, I will tell you, things are not always as they appear on the surface. There is a richness to life that we can be appreciating to deeper and deeper levels. This is where we can lead into, I think, some of the best of what this new moon and forthcoming month into December can bring. Acceptance, forgiveness, letting go of the small stuff, letting go of the stuff that we cannot control. So to surrender to the bigger picture, that which is within and in between all things. The divine dance of life is the bigger picture. How can we find attunement to that divine dance? How can we be in sync with both our individual needs and the needs of the collective? That is the aim of the game. And if we can at least have our compass pointed in that general direction, I think that we'll have a lot to gain, a lot to be excited about, and we can mutually co-liberate one another back into our truth. We've got events going on in Rasa Leela community. These are free events. There's also exclusive membership events, but we're going to be stewing in these juices. We're going to be having these rich conversations, and we're going to be forming creative opportunities, collaboration, supporting one another. Thank you so much for those who are a part of this circle. Thank you very much for listening and tuning into this video. I'm going to, there's 2 sales that I'm running on my website. One is the Polarity Workshop, which is good stuff. If you want to learn the zodiac, learn it through polarity. That's how our brain and mind works. And also, while we're still in the eclipse portal, Pluto, the 8th house, Scorpio material, 50% off in the store. I look forward to catching you. We'll talk about the full moon in Gemini in a couple weeks. As always, take care.